Well, hello YouTubers. I was out at my LT15 and I had to replace the drive belt in it, so I went to my owner's manual to figure out how to do that, and it wasn't in there. So naturally I went to YouTube, and unfortunately I didn't find it there either. So I figured it out with a little research and some phone calls, and I thought I'd put it online. So let's see how I did it. Let's start with the tools I needed. I've got a 7/16 and a 9/16 open-end wrench. You can use a socket too, it doesn't matter. But first of all, you start off with the cover up top here, and just realize that this bolt here does not need to come out. It's only the 4 on the side. That's 7/16, and I will show you real quick. It's these bolts right here. Those are 7/16. You pull those out, the whole cover comes off. Now, that's actually the new belt. The only thing you really need to disconnect down here is this spring right here, okay? Because the idler pulley is too far back against the back there for the belt to fit behind it. And you're gonna have to fit that belt behind it in order to get it there. So what I did was I took this bolt off right here. Now that's 9/16, and it's just right here. And instead of taking the whole brake assembly and the idler pulley off, I just pulled it out. You can see I pulled it out about a 1/2 inch or so, and that gave me enough room to fit that idler pulley, or the belt behind that idler pulley, and then thread it as necessary. Obviously, you'll also have to take the blade off, and I actually took this belt off the front side just so it wasn't in the way. But once you pop the blade off and that belt, and then pull this out just a little bit, throw your new belt on. Obviously this is the idler pulley, so the flat side goes on that, the groove side goes on this, which is your drive pulley, and then this is your main wheel here that the blade rests on. So obviously it will need to go around there, but it's pretty simple. I'm going to put this back together and show you it all assembled. Okay, a few things I learned putting this back on was this bolt right here, when you take the bottom nut off, it doesn't necessarily just pull right out of there. I actually switched out from an open end wrench to a socket because I actually unthreaded it to get it far enough out before I could pull it. Okay, and then I pulled this back and shimmied it out about a 1/2 inch like I showed you before. Now putting it back in, I actually had to reach on the back side and hold, because every time I tried to push it in, it actually shoved back a little, which caused the brakes to push against this wheel. So I held it from the back side as I pushed it back into place and made sure the hole was lined up again. When I put that bolt back in, it didn't slide all the way through. I don't know if it's threaded in there, but I actually had to go back to the socket and thread it all the way down before I could get that nut back on. Also, you want to notice way down here, there's actually a belt guide. You got to go behind that belt guide. Don't put the belt over the top of that, or you're going to have some issues there. So be sure to get that belt between the guide and the wheel in the back side. But everything else looks good. This spring I just took on and off by hand. It wasn't that difficult. Just pushed it down, popped it off, pushed it back down, and popped it on. So not a big deal with that. It's all back on. Now I'm going to talk about tensioning that belt. All right, I want to start with the gauge that I have here. This is from Woodmizer. It's the belt tension gauge. I really like it. First, I set this bottom piece here at 1/2 inch, because they want, when you first put a belt on, they want 14 pounds of pressure at 1/2 inch deflection. So I'm going to set that rubber O-ring there right at 1/2 inch. Now the top one, I'm just going to push it all the way down to the neck, and then I'll show you what I do over here. You're going to want to push the belt at halfway down the belt between here and where it contacts over here, and it's approximately 23 inches. 11.5 puts me just to the left side of this bracket here. Right about right there is about the halfway point. Now you want a straight edge to go right along that belt, and see that O-ring is stuck down there right at the base, but when I push this down, it's going to roll up and tell me the weight. Now I will say this, when I first put the belt on, I tried to push it down and it was so darn tight that I didn't even measure it. I just loosened it up already, and I'll show you how to do that. But let's check the tension right now and we'll get to it. Okay, I'm going to push down. I'm at about the halfway point on the belt, and when I push down, I'm going to do 1/2 inch deflection. Whoa, it's not easy to do. And it's already reading like 17. Okay, so I didn't even get to 1/2 inch and it was 17, so it's too tight. So let's go to the back side and figure out how to loosen that up a little bit. Here we are on the back side. Now this is in the manual, so I won't belabor this point. But as you can see, this little mechanism here is what you're going to be adjusting, okay? This is just basically a lock nut. So this is the one you're adjusting either up or down. You're either making this shaft longer or shorter. If it's shorter, it's a looser belt. If it's longer, it's going to be a tighter belt. And that's pretty obvious because when you disengage it, and then when you try to engage it, if it was longer, it would be tighter. And so we're going to shorten that up. And what I've got here is, I was using a crescent wrench, but an open end wrench is a lot easier to use on these. They're 3/4 top and bottom. So I'm going to shorten this up just a little bit. That means I'm going to take this bottom nut and move it down and follow it with the top nut. Okay, I'm going to reset this, run that O-ring all the way to the base there, make sure that's at 1/2 inch, and reset my gauge. And you're probably wondering how much I moved it. I moved it 4 flats in the back, so 4 flat faces of the nut, both the bottom and the top, and we'll see what it did to the front side here. There's my halfway, and I try to move my arm out of the way this time so you can see it. And there's 1/2 inch. Whoops, kind of tipped it. Okay, that's kilograms. There's pounds. Okay, now that's 1/2 inch. That's right at 16. I'm going to drop 2 more flats in the back and see if I can get it down to 14. You know, I watched a Woodmizer video of a guy doing this, and he was far more graceful than I was. But maybe he's done it for many years, who knows. Okay, we're set. We're at the midpoint. Pushing down. Okay. 1/2 inch. And there's kilograms again. Oh, 14. Sometimes you're good and sometimes you're lucky. So I'll reset that and do a double check here to make sure it's at 14. I'm also going to recheck this after I run it for a while because that belt's going to stretch out quite a bit, I'm sure. I am sure of it. Okay, there we go. Even a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. 14 pounds, there it is. We're going to run this up, and it's going to stretch a little, and it says after continuous use, it should be 9 pounds. But right now, it's going to slowly relax the belt over time. But I want to make sure it stays tight enough that my blade does not slip like it did earlier. Well, I hope that was helpful, especially for you Woodmizer users out there. I just want to note I ran 2 logs through the mill and I checked the tension again and it's down to 10 pounds. So it will slack off after a couple of logs. Thanks for watching, and if you haven't subscribed, please do so. And if you have, leave a comment. We'd love to read them.